The Half-Full Consumer Advocacy Radio Show. Listen in nationwide on the Tan Talk and Starcom radio networks with your host, Lori Zook, the consumer champion. Each week, we'll be discussing problems and solutions, changing negatives to positives, and helping you, the consumer, to learn something new. Get smarter faster and avoid scams and fraud. All opinions are that of the host and guests, and all shows are for educational purposes only and not to be construed as legal advice. Here's your host, Lori Zook.
Welcome to the show. My guest today is author M.L. Harris. We're going to be talking about what it takes to become a novelist. Now, he's written some great books. I couldn't put them down. So I want to welcome you to the show, M.L., and if you'll share with our listeners a bit about yourself and your background.
I just love it, and I started writing when I was in junior high school. And I was just writing poetry and prose and things like that. And then I got, after a long career in the financial industry, I decided that I was going to become a writer. And that was in 1994. So I semi-retired from that industry, got into writing, even before photography. And I started writing a novel. It took me 10 years to write that novel. And that novel wasn't published until 2008. And I'm sure you'll have more questions about that. But as of this writing, I've written and published 6 novels. I'm working on my memoirs for my grandchildren. And then I have an idea for novel number 7. So that'll give me 8 published works. Plus, I have some published stage plays out there, 1 screenplay. I went to screenwriting school. I audited a course at USF for screenwriting with Mark Lieb, who's one of the great screenwriting teachers in the area. And I wrote a screenplay based on my first novel. Okay. So now I'm just rocking and rolling here and having a lot of fun.
Well, I have to tell you, I read mostly nonfiction books. However, when I started your first book in your series, I just kind of got sucked in, and I couldn't put it down. I would go to bed at 3 a.m. because I'd still be reading your book. So
was that The Angel and the Therapist?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was excellent. Well, tell me a little bit about how you became interested in writing. What made you want to become a writer?
You know, this is kind of a funny story. As a kid, I didn't read. I hated it. And then I had a very smart English teacher one time that suggested that I go to the library and find something that I could read. And I read a story on an athlete that an All-American football player. And that kind of got me going. And then in the 8th grade, I read The Odyssey of Homer. And that it was like magic. I don't know what happened. The light bulb went on, and I went, whoa, this is crazy. This is amazing. It took me to another place that I'd never been, another dimension. And then I just kind of had the want to. And I didn't really get started until my freshman year in college because I was very athletic, always playing 3 sports in high school. And then when I went to my first year in college, I met a professor who, this was in composition, and I wrote a 500-word piece, and he held me after class, and he asked me this question: do you know how good you are? And I was very shocked, and I was complimented, but I said, not really. And then I transferred to a different school and had another professor who did the same thing and encouraged me to write my first novel, which remains unpublished today. That's a whole nother story. So I hope that answers your question.
So you had an inspiring teacher, and I want to mention your photography is wonderful, and you use the photographs you've taken as the covers for your novels, correct?
Yes, and I felt like nobody could describe a cover better than myself, so I do the photography thus far. I mean, there may be a time when I don't, but thus far, yes.
All right. Now, how would you describe yourself as a writer?
I think the industry would describe me as an indie writer, I-N-D-Y. I describe myself as, that's okay, I'll wear that label, but I describe myself also as a visionary spiritual writer. Wouldn't you say so after reading that first book?
I would. Your books, they covered every aspect that you could possibly put into a book. You covered the whole thing when it came to the development.
And I don't leave romance and sex and pain and death and anger and love and all that out, because that's part of life.
Right. Well,
and I've noticed in many spiritual books that they come across with a lot of religiosity, and I minimalize that in my writing.
Well, what was interesting about your characters was when I was reading the books, I could actually see them. I felt like I could see the characters. You know,
that's
they were my
just
friends.
The greatest compliment I've ever had. Thank you so much. You made my day.
Well, you're very welcome. Now, what about rejections from publishers? I mean, when you first tell me about how when you put together these books, what's the process? You submit it to somebody? You submit it to publishers?
Okay, that's a really great question. First of all, I made the blunder in 1994 when I started writing The Angel and the Therapist. I went to the drugstore and I purchased a spiral notebook and started writing it longhand. And then that meant, and we did have computers back in that day, and we did have word processors, and then that simply meant that I had to go over the process all over again. And I found a style for writing that novelists use, and I copied that style, and then I did some research. It's been so long I don't remember how I researched, but probably through the library. And I had 32 rejections on that book that you like so much.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm a hard-headed stubborn Irishman. I just kept sending them in, you know.
That's right.
And then I got really angry one day and just went to hell with them. And what happened was I hope I'm not getting ahead of your questions, but I met this gentleman who was introduced to me by a friend as a guy who had written a book, and he was from Georgia. He was very politically connected, going all the way back to Reagan. He was actually a member of the Republican Party. He was very high up, and he had a position in that party, and he wrote his book about politics, and he was rubbing elbows with Reagan and all the biggies back then. And so he handed me a copy of his book. He just gave it to me. And then I said, well, I've written a book, but I can't get it published. And I told him what happened, and he went, well, here's my publisher. Go to my publisher, and you'll get your book published. That's all he said to me.
Okay.
So I wrote it down, and I contacted them, and I found out that they were a self-publishing print-on-demand publisher. I didn't know anything about it, but when I investigated it, I thought, this is maybe the way to go, because once I have the book, when you submit books to literary agents or publishers, they'll say something really squirrely like, send me chapters 3 through 6.
Okay.
And then you send that to them, and chapters 3 through 6, I mean, if I were a literary agent or a publisher, I would say, send me chapters 1 through 5. You know,
right.
And because they don't do that, then you get into part of the whole process that makes a book readable and good is that it's set up properly and that the characters are developed properly. And anyway, I mean, that's what I think. I'm not a publisher or a literary agent, but I went to this publisher and I got The Angel and the Therapist published. And I got it out there, and it was nice to have. I mean, you've held the copy in your hand. It's a decent-looking publication.
It is. Now, the self-publishing, so anyone can go and have a book published, and then what do? That's how you have it listed on Amazon?
Yes. Now, you can get your book published, but this particular publisher is connected. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of Amazon, and they're out in California. And what's really good about these guys is you get your book published, and it goes. You can send it all over the world, anywhere in the world. Plus, I went into Barnes & Noble last week to buy another book, a book that I wanted. And I went to the information desk and I said, do you have any books by M.L. Harris? And the lady looked it up, and she said, we don't have them here, but we can order any book that author wrote that you want. And I said, well, that's really cool. I'm the author. So, and then she went on to explain a print-on-demand book doesn't mean that they can't sell it. They just don't keep any in stock.
Okay. So let me ask you also, I see on Amazon that you can download books. Is your book something that can be downloaded, or is it printed and then shipped?
Okay. That's another great question, because they are connected with Kindle Direct Publishing. And an author does not have to make their book electronic. That's an option. I did. All of my books are available on Kindle, and for less money. But some people will not read a print book. They want it on Kindle. And I've probably sold as many on Kindle as I have in print.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I'm an iPad. I read on my iPad late at night, so I can see why people would want to do that. Well, Emil, I want you to stay with us. We're going to go to a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk more.
Sounds good.
Our highly competitive and hectic world is fraught with dishonesty and challenges. Critical decisions must be made on a daily basis with accuracy when substantial assets are at risk. When you are confronted with a decision point involving opportunity and risk, consult with Sharpline Investigations, statewide experts in due diligence, investigations, and litigation support. Sharpline's professionals work with clients to conduct interviews, deep background investigations, and develop facts and intelligence related to litigation. When circumstances require confidential and expert fact-finding, turn to Sharpline Investigations, the statewide leaders in investigations and risk mitigation. Visit sharplineinvestigations.com or call 855-394-0042.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health.
Are your credit reports a mess? Are debt collectors hounding you? Maybe you're in foreclosure or headed towards foreclosure and don't know where to turn. It's time to stop panicking. Take back control of your life. Make the first step by calling Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Mention the word radio for a free 15-minute consultation. Don't delay. Call today.
All right, we're back. And ML, I want to talk a little bit about the books that you've published. How many books have you written? I think you said 6?
Well, I've published 6, and I'm working on my memoirs for my children and grandchildren. I'm about a fourth of the way through that, and then I recently got another idea for a new novel, so that'll be number 7. But I published 6, yes. 6 are available for sale.
Okay, now
or for purchase.
Are all 6 part of the same series, or are they different?
No. Okay. Here's what I really don't know how to describe myself as a writer, because I didn't really want to get slotted into a particular type of a genre, let's just say, except the visionary spiritual is always going to be there, because that's part of who I am. But I wrote in published book one, which you read, which is called The Angel and the Therapist. Then book two, which you read, is Searching for Gianna. And then book three, which you read, was Demons Living Among Us, Volume 1. And then I believe you read Volume 2, Demons Living Among Us, Volume 2.
Right.
And then there's just two more, Volume 3, Volume 4, which you haven't read. So I have 4 of the 6 are series publication, and I'm not going to really do that next. I'm going to just do another standalone book.
All right. Now, you mentioned in the last segment about indie writers. What exactly is an indie writer? I'm not familiar with that term. It's
an independent writer who's a person that's just out there freelance, like a freelancer. In other words, most indie writers are people who were rejected. And they wrote well. People gave them positive feedback and said, wow, this is really good. And then we said something embarrassingly like, well, if it's so good, why can't I get it published? And then several big-name companies opened up for the indie writers because they realized there was a tremendous market for it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder why, you said you got a lot of rejections up front, but your books are so good. It makes me wonder who's reviewing the books.
Did you want to talk about that?
Well, sure. Yeah. I do, because I've read them and I think they're fabulous. And I sit here and I wonder, does it not fit their little niche of books?
Well, in fairness to them, most of them have a niche genre, or that have a niche readership. A lot of the literary agents that I investigated after I got so many rejections, I started asking the question, well, what have they written and published? And I found that it was interesting that I didn't find one that had written and published books. It's kind of, to me, like the sports writers. Typically, the sports writers in the nation are guys who've never played sports. And they just like sports, and they get into sports, and they start writing about sports. The publishers and back in the day, they really controlled everything. If you couldn't get a well-known publisher to publish a book, you were just out of luck, and it wasn't going to happen. So my philosophy about this now, for anyone who wants to write a book, is go to the print-on-demand, independent publisher, print it, self-publish a book, and then if you're going to submit it to an agent, send the whole book to them.
Okay.
And go, here's the whole book. If you want to read chapters 3 through 6, knock yourself out. Here's the whole book, just in case you want to read the rest of it.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense to me. First off, if I were going to read a book, either I would skim it to get an idea, but I'm a fast reader, or I would want the first chapter, something in the middle, and the last chapter, so I would see beginning, middle, and conclusion if I were going to evaluate a book.
I have no idea. And all of them have their own little quirks. Some will say, send me chapter 10. I mean, I don't understand it, although I do go to, like, Barnes & Noble, pick up a book and open it at random somewhere around a third of the way through just to see the writer's style and to see if I like their style and if I can connect with their style. And then I'll read the back cover and see if it's something interesting I want to read. So maybe that's the deal. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, are there any books that helped you with your writing?
Yes. And there's 2 books that I highly recommend. First of all, The Elements of Style, 3rd edition by William Strunk and E.B. White. It's a very short paperback, maybe 150 pages, but it helped me immensely. And it helps not only with style, but with grammar and punctuation and stuff like that. The book that really got me going was recommended at a seminar. I went to a writing seminar when I was still in the business world on writing, on how to write a book. And they recommended the Zen and the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury.
A famous author.
I'm sorry?
He's a famous author.
Oh, yeah, he just passed last year. And that book was amazing in the way it helped me get started. And he's of the philosophy, sit down, make yourself write 3,000 words a day. Start writing. And I did start that way. I don't operate that way now. But then he also says start with short stories, and that'll help you in character development, etc. So those 2 books are good. You can get them both for a total of $15 on Amazon.
Okay, now what about pet peeves? Do you have pet peeves in writing?
You're asking some great questions today. Well, I do, but no. Let me just say this: these are my pet peeves. It doesn't mean that I'm right, but my biggest pet peeve is writing in a passive voice. And when I read something, here's how I know it's well written. If I'm not thinking about anything, and if I'm just in the article or in the book and feeling it, then it's well written. But writing in the passive voice is my real number one pet peeve. And it would be, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Dad had been working for the government. Dad had been working for the government. That's passive voice. Here would be a better way to write that sentence in the active voice. Dad worked for the government.
Okay.
The had been is irrelevant. Stay in the Dad worked for the government. Now, you didn't tell when or where, but neither did the previous sentence. It gave you the idea that it was past tense, but worked is kind of past tense too. I am at work, or I worked yesterday. So it drives me nuts, and that's how come when I read the newspaper, I keep a red pen, and when I see something in the passive voice, I circle it.
You're correcting it, aren't you?
Yeah, it's just for me to help me become a better writer.
All right. Well, what do you consider the most important thing or things in writing a novel? What's most important to you?
Okay, first of all, you have to have a story. But believe it or not, to me, the story isn't nearly as important. I would say have a theme. Because if you have a preconceived idea for a story, then you're kind of writing in a box, and you need to think outside of the box. So the absolute number one most important thing to me is character and character development. Because you see, to me, I cannot read something where I cannot connect to the characters. I have to have a strong character connection. I have to believe the characters. I have to believe that they're real, and I have to understand them. Like, why did she say that? Well, if the character has been properly developed, then we'll understand why she's behaving the way she is and why she's thinking the way she is, why she's acting the way she is or he is. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and I was thinking about that question actually on my drive over here to the studio today. You know, sometimes you watch shows on. I don't watch much TV, but once in a while I'll watch a TV show with a lot of characters. You know, maybe I'll follow a series, and a lot of times you don't know anything about the individual characters. It just seems to be about the big picture and not about the individuals. And those are the shows that turn me off, where I don't know anything about the character. So the interesting thing when I read your books, you do seem to fully develop the character, so the reader feels as if they know that character.
Well, you said, you hit the nail right on the head, so to speak, if I may be permitted to use a cliche. Because when you said that you really could see the characters, that's what happened to me when I read, back in the early days, when I read Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn. And I just felt like I was in the room. And I read an article about Samuel Clemens, who was, Mark Twain. And he said, someone said, why are your novels so famous? Why do so many people like your work? And he said, I don't know. I just get them in the room, and I get them in the room quickly, meaning the reader.
Right.
They have to be like almost as a voyeur, where they're in the room, they're watching the scene, they're watching the person. And I do it mostly with show, don't tell, feel, don't think. I have these little slogans up where I write on my desk, show, don't tell. So, for example, I wouldn't say it's 1:10 in the afternoon. I would say, and Stella looked at the wall and she saw the big white clock with the black hands going around, rested on 1:10, and she knew it was p.m. because she looked outside.
Right. You use a lot of descriptives. I think that's what kind of drew me in. Well, when you develop and build characters, especially the women characters, because you're a man, how do you do that? How do you develop that?
Well, my feeling is that A man can write about women. Straight people can write about gay people. Gay people can write about straight people. It's irrelevant if, and this is the big if they are interested in people, enjoy people, are observant of people, and listen to people, and watch people. And I have, 8 daughters, and I've become very adept at listening to them and what they say, and I ask questions. And I'm just very interested in characters. Men, to me, are a lot easier. I am a man. I think, and I hate to say this, hope you don't get any negative blowback on this, but I think men are boring, mostly. To create a really interesting male character, he has to be different from most men. But with women, I think with women, it's a little easier because women operate on feelings. They don't think much. Their life is run on feelings, which is just so easy for a writer because all you have to do is get into feelings and see women acting and reacting based on feelings. And I just think that it's amazingly fun to watch a woman in a room. I just build a strong character, I wind her up and let her go, and I let her write her story.
All right, I gotcha. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, so stay with us.
Okay.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health.
Are your credit reports a mess? Are debt collectors hounding you? Maybe you're in foreclosure or headed towards foreclosure and don't know where to turn. It's time to stop panicking. Take back control of your life. Make the first step by calling Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Mention the word radio for a free 15-minute consultation. Don't delay. Call today.
Our highly competitive and hectic world is fraught with dishonesty and challenges. Critical decisions must be made on a daily basis with accuracy when substantial assets are at risk. When you are confronted with a decision point involving opportunity and risk, consult with Sharpline Investigations, statewide experts in due diligence, investigations, and litigation support. Sharpline's professionals work with clients to conduct interviews, deep background investigations, and develop facts and intelligence related to litigation. When circumstances require confidential and expert fact-finding, turn to Sharpline Investigations, the statewide leaders in investigations and risk mitigation. Visit sharplineinvestigations.com or call 855-394-0042.
Welcome back to the Half Empty, Half Full radio show. I've been speaking with novelist M.L. Harris, and I want to cover in this segment a bunch more about writing the novel. You know, does there always have to be a villain in every novel? Is that what makes it more interesting? The evil?
Well, we call those antagonists, and then you have the protagonist. I think it's very important to have that in the book, but they don't have to live all the way through the entire book. And that you can have an antagonist and a protagonist even in a chapter, and that's not a bad idea. So, for example, let's say you have two female friends, and one has come to see the other friend, and she's just furious because of something that went on between. She told her something in confidence, and the friend violated that confidence, and she's come, and they're going to have it out. And so you have the protagonist and the antagonist. The protagonist was supposedly the main character who accidentally let a cat out of the bag, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this friend that comes over, and they're just livid. They're the antagonist for that chapter.
Okay.
Even though the protagonist made a mistake. People make mistakes. So the character should be very believable, and where people are reading, they go, oh my gosh, I did that myself one time. Oh, that's horrible. I know exactly how she feels.
They're relating.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, they're relating
to
it.
But in a story, you could have, for example, a protagonist, and like the Odyssey of Homer, you have Ulysses, who's the protagonist, and he's traveling through all these different lands and areas, and everywhere he goes, he meets an antagonist. And that will really keep a person glued to the story and to the book. It's like, oh my God, what's going to happen next?
Well, that's why I couldn't put any of your books down, and I'd stay up all night because I wanted to read the next chapter, and then finally, I knew I had to get up, so I had to put it down. But I read some of your books in a matter of like 3 or 4 days.
Well, you're my new BFF. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I wish I could get you on my marketing team.
Well, you never know what could happen. You never know. Now, there's an expression called killing babies. What does that mean in writing? Sounds awful.
Okay, so killing babies means something different in writing novels than it means in writing screenplays. In screenplays, for example, killing babies means, let's say, I think that first novel you read is 530 pages long. So a screenplay has to be 125 minutes for the movie, and 1 page equals 1 minute, so to speak. So you've got a 500. How would you make that book into a movie? There are 530 pages, and we got to narrow it down to 125, which includes action, not only dialogue but action. And so some babies got to be killed. That's what that means.
So you're taking out then the less important aspects.
And how many times have you heard someone say, it was really a good movie, but the book's better?
Lots of times.
Yeah. And so now in writing a novel, killing babies means, and I got this tip from Stephen King in an interview that I watched with him. I believe it was on YouTube. And, your listeners can just go to YouTube and search Stephen King, where he said, don't be afraid to kill your babies. In other words, let's say you have a character that's very likable, and the character's in the book for a chapter. Like, for example, in Searching for Gianna, you had someone, die. I don't want to ruin it, but right away in that book. And that was a very interesting character, I think you'll agree with me.
Yes.
The lesbian girl. Very, I just fell in love with her. And, when I let that story go in that direction, I remember thinking, am I crazy? Why would I? Oh, my God, I could do so much with that character. But then I remembered I don't really write the story. I know this sounds schizophrenic, but I let the characters write the story, and that's the way the story was supposed to end. So that's what that means, killing babies. I hope that answered your question.
It does, and I'm going to kind of give you a parallel to that because I think I understand. Are you familiar with the series Game of Thrones?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of mentioning of it on Facebook, but I'm not the least bit. I'm like you. I read nonfiction.
Right. My other half watches it. It's on Sunday nights at 9:00. So usually I'm reading on the iPad and half listening. But it's interesting because he has the Kindle version of the Game of Thrones books, and he says to me they are totally different. Everything is totally different than what you see on the series. So, on the series, you're seeing a lot of the action, but in the books, the characters are described much better, and it's not exactly the same. So, different situation. But how do you...
in that, it's interesting you bring that up because, I did go to screenplay writing school, and in that, it can be done. And the better movies, directors know how to do that. they can do that with action.
Okay.
But it's not easy.
Now, how do you know when you have something that's really good?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. But I hate to sound egocentric, but I mean, it's just a feeling, and my emotions will tell me. I mean, if I get on a crying binge when I'm writing something, I go, this is crazy. I mean, it's just a story. I'm just writing. Why am I so bent out of shape over this, or happy, almost utopic happy? Where I'm very manic. Then I go, maybe this is good. But when you really know is when someone like you reads a book, because I know you and you're very honest, and they give you the feedback that you gave me. Then I go, maybe it is pretty good.
Yeah, they were they were very good, and I understand having a gut feeling. Let me go back for a second. Before you publish a book, do you ever have anyone read what you've written before it's actually been published to give you feedback?
No, and I don't have them edit it either. And the reason for that is I joined a writing club, 20 years ago, and they held it at the Hudson Library up in Hudson, Florida, where I lived at the time. And I went in there, and somebody read something they wrote, and there were about 10 people there. And this poor girl, they ripped her up one side and down the other, and she went out of there crying.
That's terrible.
And I just went, this is ridiculous. This is not what it's all about. And then I heard Stephen King say, when asked, did you know you were going to be famous and that you would be making all this money? And he said, I never gave it a thought. And she said, what was your motivation? And he said, I wrote because it was fun, and I still write today because I have fun when I'm writing.
So it's the people who enjoy it the most. They're not necessarily doing it for the money. They're doing it because they love what they do.
They enjoy it, and they know that other people will enjoy it. I know other people will enjoy my work now because I have it there on Amazon, and people have read my books, all of them except maybe for the Volume 4, which just came out, and I get 5-star ratings on everything I've written. I've never had less than 5-star.
Right. I was actually reviewing you this morning on Amazon, and I was reading through it, and wow, I mean, your ratings are tremendous.
And one of the ladies who read my book, let's see, the Angel and the Therapist, she read that one first, and come to find out that she's a librarian and is a voracious reader. She reads 2 to 3 books a week. And she gave me a 5-star and a nice comment, and I went, oh my gosh, maybe this stuff is good.
Yeah, I think it's great. How many pages a day do you write when you write?
Well, okay, now Ray Bradbury, in his book Zen and the Art of Writing, says you should write 3,000 words a day. And writers are very fearful. I've talked to other writers, very fearful of what's called writer's block. And I'm different. I don't let that control me. I believe that that's a negative. I try to stay positive. When I do write, I do have a minimum of 5 pages. In other words, if I don't feel like writing today, I'm not going to write. But if I start writing, I'm not going to quit till I get at least 5 pages. And that's around 1,500 words, 1,400 to 1,500 words. But when I get in the zone, I mean, I've written as many as 40 pages in one session.
That's a lot. All right,
yeah.
We're gonna take a short break. We're gonna come back for the last segment. I've got a bunch more questions for you.
Yippee.
Are your credit reports a mess? Are debt collectors hounding you? Maybe you're in foreclosure or headed towards foreclosure and don't know where to turn. It's time to stop panicking. Take back control of your life. Make the first step by calling Credit Education Consultants today at 813-500-6064. That's 813-500-6064. Mention the word radio for a free 15-minute consultation. Don't delay. Call today.
Our highly competitive and hectic world is fraught with dishonesty and challenges. Critical decisions must be made on a daily basis with accuracy when substantial assets are at risk. When you are confronted with a decision point involving opportunity and risk, consult with Sharpline Investigations, statewide experts in due diligence, investigations, and litigation support. Sharpline's professionals work with clients to conduct interviews, deep background investigations, and develop facts and intelligence related to litigation. When circumstances require confidential and expert fact-finding, turn to Sharpline Investigations, the statewide leaders in investigations and risk mitigation. Visit sharplineinvestigations.com or call 855-394-0042.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with author, novelist, M.L. Harris. M.L., you mentioned the zone in the last segment. What's the zone?
It's another dimension. And it can be a scary place to be, but it's where we need to be to do the best work. And the zone is, gosh, how would I describe the zone? Okay, well, let me give you an example of what happened to me one day. I hit the zone. And it was this other dimension where I'm in the story. You know, I'm writing the story, but I'm in it. I mean, they got me. I'm in there. And I'm in the room, and I'm in the characters. And one minute I'm a male, the next minute I'm a female. One minute I'm gay, the next minute I'm straight. I'm just in the story. And I got so ensconced in the story that suddenly I forgot what day it was, what time it was, where I was. I didn't know, and it frightened me a little bit because when I finished that particular day, I did about 20 pages, just bam, bam, bam. And I had to look at my calendar to find out what day it was, and I did that on my computer down in the lower right-hand corner. It told me what time and what day it was, and it was a little frightening, but that's when you get your best work, when you just release yourself and loose yourself to the power of the universe and get in the story. That's when the best stuff happens, and I call that, I think that answers your question. That's the zone.
It does, but it makes me want to ask you one more question, which is, are the characters directing you with what to write about them?
Well, that's such a great question because sometimes you don't know. Am I writing this or are they writing it? I make my characters real. I give them life. I breathe kind of life into them, so to speak. It's like, okay, you're a real person. You're a real character. And I become so involved in my characters that I kind of let it go.